Hey guys, tonight we squeeze ourselves into Albert Einstein's modest Bern apartment at the crack of dawn, right when the pale Swiss sunrise tiptoes over the rooftops and splashes golden stripes across his cluttered desk. You can almost taste the chill in the air, hear the hesitation of the city below, and, if you lean close enough, smell the faint musk of ink, wool socks, and yesterday's burnt coffee grounds. Quick disclaimer: you probably won't survive this schedule unless you genuinely enjoy balancing equations on 3 hours of sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing the little constellation of sleepy historians lighting up the map. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in the half-light, nose numb, blanket tangled, pencil still wedged behind your ear like a stubborn E-Day fix. The dream you just escaped, racing a beam of light on a squeaky bicycle, still crackles behind your eyes. Without rubbing the sleep away, you lurch to the rickety desk, scrape the chair across uneven boards, and start scribbling before reality can bleach the colors from that midnight cinema. Graphite rasps across cheap paper. If rider equals light speed, what happens to the mirror's reflection you're staring into? The line hangs, daring daylight to disagree. Your living space is a cramped cubby perched under the eaves on Kramgas. Slanted ceiling, 2 narrow windows, 0 insulation. The room is so small that when you stretch, the violin case by the stove sighs as if offended. Socks, 1 navy, 1 mustard, dangle from a nail, forming an accidental flag of nonconformity. On the sill perches a dismantled pocket watch, each gear lined up like patient soldiers awaiting orders. Did you know Einstein's landlady once griped to neighbors that her upstairs tenant practiced violin scales so early she began humming them in her dreams? You are that tenant, of course, and the violin sits silent only because 1 string surrendered at 3 in the morning, when inspiration outweighed courtesy. You shuffle to the tiny iron stove and coax a petulant flame into existence. Chicory brew burbles in a dented kettle, filling the apartment with a smell somewhere between burnt toast and hopeful mornings. You take a sip, scalding, bitter, perfect. Outside, church bells hint at 6 o'clock. You crack the window, and Bern greets you with a skin of mist lying gently over the Ara River. Cobblestones glisten, horses stamp, and bakery warmth rolls uphill in invisible waves. Between gulps, you flip through a stack of patent applications, today's workload smuggled home last night under your coat. One diagram illustrates a pocket compass that claims immunity to magnetic storms. You smirk, half impressed, half skeptical, and dog-ear the page for later scrutiny. Historians still argue whether these dawn encounters with other people's inventions seeded Einstein's knack for thought experiments, or if the job merely financed bread, milk, and replacement violin strings. Breakfast is yesterday's roll softened in milk, but it frees your hands for thought. You picture 2 trains hurtling past each other at ludicrous speed. Passengers wave cheerfully yet disagree about what now means. The notion prickles your skin like static. You jot a line in the margin: simultaneity, elastic, and grin at the audacity of the question. A soft cough seeps through the thin wall. Mileva stirs, the baby offers a sleepy protest, and then silence settles again. You tiptoe to avoid creaking boards, granting yourself a few more minutes of solitary orbit. In that pocket of quiet, you assemble a speculative universe where time bends, lengths shrink, and the speed of light stands majestically aloof. The travel clock above the doorway, half disemboweled during last night's curiosity surgery, spins its hands freely, mocking your quest for precision. You grin at the irony. The world's future timekeeper living with a clock that can't keep time. The sun edges higher, whitening the sky. The smell of fresh Zopf drifts in, reminding you that the patent office values punctuality as though it were a cosmic constant. You fold the dream-streaked scrap of paper and tuck it into your coat pocket, a secret seed for later. Fingers linger on the graphite etchings as though warmth alone might coax them into equations. Coat collar up, you step into the stairwell where echoes linger like delayed signals. Halfway down, you tighten frayed laces and catch the neighbor's door, Frau Baumgartner, hat maker par excellence, crack open. Her cat peers out and judges your sock combination with imperial disdain. You bow to it anyway. Courtesy is free, theoretical physics not so much. The staircase exhales dust, scented with varnish and coal as you descend. Outside, a baker's apprentice pedals past, pretzels stacked like a wobbly constellation. The aroma tangles with chimney smoke, reminding you that even ravenous galaxies would pause for fresh bread. You let the cart rattle ahead, tug your collar higher, and feel the folded dream note pressing your chest. Beneath the chilly sunrise, the idea warms you better than wool. By strict reckoning, you are already 2 minutes behind, but you walk unhurried. The cobbles echo each step, each echo a gentle metronome. Somewhere a distant tram bell rings. You picture yourself boarding, pocket watch in one hand, impossibility in the other, bound for a day where bureaucracy and brilliance will spar politely. Again. The street is still yawning when you duck into the corner cafe that never seems to close. A snug refuge, fragrant with steaming grounds and freshly mopped floors. The bell over the door tings like the opening note of a symphony, and by reflex you glance at your coat sleeve to ensure the chalk dust smudge from last night's equations hasn't multiplied. The barista, a stout gentleman who measures life in espresso shots and murmured rumours, nods at you with the kind of recognition normally reserved for long-lost relatives or well-tipped regulars. He doesn't bother with words. He simply sets a cracked porcelain cup beneath the brass spout, trusting that you, the suspected neighbourhood oddity with mismatched socks, require liquid consciousness before you can manage basic greetings. You settle at a solitude-friendly corner table, and as the first hiss of the machine crescendos, you slide your violin case onto the bench beside you. The bow inside has endured more emotional outbursts than any official at the patent office, and the case itself, scuffed oak, edges softened by travel, looks like it might sigh in relief at being set down. Fingertips drum lightly on its surface, 1, 2, 3, 4, the same rhythm you use to pace your breathing before wrestling stubborn variables. A saucer lands gently in front of you. The creamer on top of the espresso looks like a copper dawn trapped in miniature, and the steam fogs your spectacles. You raise the cup, letting the handle press a tiny crescent moon into your thumb as you sip. Bitter, yes, but the bitterness is a cipher you crack open each morning. Behind it lurks the jolt, the staccato pop of neurons that insists the universe is waiting. While the coffee cools just enough to gulp, you loosen the violin's latches with almost parental care. The cafe is quiet. You could practically catalogue every clink from the dish pit, yet there is a hush that invites music. You tuck the instrument beneath your chin, shutting your eyes as the varnished wood settles against your shoulder. You draw the bow in a slow glissando, and the note hovers like morning fog over the R. Not loud, just present, shimmering. Patrons glance up but continue stirring sugar and scanning headlines. Byrne is used to your dawn serenades. The melody you choose is a fragment of Mozart repurposed into your own meandering scale, something between a lullaby and a formula. Each descending interval feels like the motion of a train easing down a gradient. Each leap upward mirrors the mathematical hop your mind makes when another piece of cosmic machinery clicks into place. You are rehearsing the language your subconscious speaks when it drafts revolutionary physics behind your conscious back. Did you know? Einstein affectionately called his violin Lena, and believed coaxing harmonies from its strings clarified problems that resisted paper and ink. When asked later why music mattered, he shrugged and said it revealed life's inner beauty. Though you suspect he liked how the bow forced his cramped shoulders to open, quite literally expanding his perspective. The note fades, replaced by the barista's approving grunt, and a single clap from an elderly patron whose newsprint remains fluttering mid-air. You return Lena to her velvet cradle, snap shut the brass clasps, and exhale. With the ritual complete, the caffeine finished, and a brief performance logged in the universe's ledger, your brain feels tuned, an antique radio, dialed to the right frequency. Ideas that moments ago skittered like shy mice now venture into the open. Sock awareness re-emerges when you cross your ankles beneath the table. Navy on the left, mustard on the right. It began accidentally, but now serves as a daily reminder that symmetry, though elegant on paper, can bore the human spirit. You twirl a stir spoon between fingertips and decide to honour the tradition by buying more mismatched pairs. Let uniformity nag the clockmakers. You glance at the patent docket you're carrying, its leather flap catching a glint of weak sunlight pushing through the cafe window. Inside is a proposal for an electric funerary urn, ashes illuminated by discreet bulbs so families can see memories glow. It's kooky, yet charming, and your grin widens at the thought that creativity knows no respectable boundaries. Your fingers itch to examine the circuit diagram, but you refrain. There will be time in your ink-stained cubicle to dissect it. For now, the espresso's final drop beckons and you tip the cup back, tasting a smoky whisper of grounds. Outside, the chill remains, though the sky has traded grey for a reluctant, washed-out blue. You shoulder violin and docket, push through the door, and feel the city's pulse quicken. A baker unloads baskets of Zwetschgen tarts, their purple filling glistening like new galaxies, as if echoing your own mental ferment. The cafe's bell rings again, this time in farewell, and you step off the curb humming the very phrase you just played. The tune threads itself through your thoughts as you walk, syncing footfall to melody, cobblestones to time signatures. The mismatched socks peak above worn shoes, bright flecks against dark trousers, leaving small declarations of defiance with every stride. Beyond the shop fronts, trams clatter to a rhythm that slides effortlessly beneath your own, like two equations aligning their limits. You pause by a fountain, where pigeons conduct chaotic board meetings atop the statue's bronze shoulders. The water splashes an accompaniment to your internal concert. At the next corner, you pass a window stacked with pocket watches, each ticking out a slightly different present. Some faces show Roman numerals, others plain digits, but all slice time into neat quanta, blissfully certain of their mission. You raise an eyebrow at their arrogance. After all, you're about to spend the day proving that such neatness is only skin deep. Somewhere inside you, the question of simultaneity tugs again. What if these clocks, each within a loaf throw's distance of the next, are never truly synchronized? The thought plucks another chord in your mind, and you hum a descending arpeggio in response. A light breeze nudges the violin case at your side. You imagine photons surfing that breeze, indifferent to the velocity of the cafe door you recently exited, unruffled by the mismatched socks now accelerating into the day. The constancy feels absurd and miraculous at once, the type of cosmic joke best shared over coffee. You continue downhill toward the river, your unconventional uniform, chalk-scratched coat, brilliant butterscotch and indigo socks, violin bumping your hip, marking you as half bureaucrat, half wandering minstrel. The city, with its latticed shutters and medieval arcades, expects clockwork. You, however, expect relativity, only you haven't named it yet. The tension between those expectations hums beneath your skin like rosin-dusted strings. With each step, your mind replays the morning's melody in slower and slower motion, stretching the notes like taffy until they nearly stop. It dawns on you, again, that speed, perception, and rhythm might be bound by some deeper covenant. And so, socks mismatched, brain buzzing, you quicken your pace toward the era's glassy mirroring waters, ready for the commute that doubles as a moving laboratory. Cobblestones give way to riverbank gravel as you veer off the main street and let the Aar's chill breath greet your cheeks. The water glides in a glassy ribbon the colour of melted jade, slow but relentless, as though it knows that patience outlasts everything, even the frantic minds of theoretical clerks racing to work. You fall into stride beside the rail, coat flapping like a reluctant sail, violin case tapping your thigh to the rhythm of half-forgotten Mozart. Morning fog hovers just above the surface, tinting the world in soft grayscale. You watch it lift in lazy curls and imagine photons piercing each wisp at exactly the same speed, unbothered by dew or doubt. A tram bell dings somewhere behind you, but here the dominant soundtrack is the sibilant hush of water licking stone. The city's clamour drifts farther with each step, until all that remains is your breathing, the faint creak of shoe leather, and the slow burble of a river older than every equation you'll ever write. A swallow swoops overhead, its split tail skimming the fog. You picture yourself riding shotgun on the bird's dash, leaning forward, chin tucked, daring the light beams to keep pace. Do they feel the urgency? Or is urgency entirely a human illusion, a restless itch invented by office whistles and filing deadlines? Your thoughts drift, coasting right alongside that swallow, until gravity reasserts itself with the crunch of pebbles underfoot. Someone once plastered a sign near this very bend, Baden verboten, swimming forbidden, ostensibly to save citizens from icy currents. You grin, recalling rumours that a younger, less encumbered you once disobeyed that order, stripping to long johns for a midnight plunge among university pranksters. The memory surfaces with the smell of wet wool and chlorine-clean clarity. You were already negotiating with the cosmos back then, but the cosmos answered mostly with goosebumps. A baker's boy pedals past again, perhaps the same apprentice looping roots, ringing a bell that sounds suspiciously triumphant. He leaves behind the imprint of warm dough and burnt sugar, prompting your stomach to issue a polite inquiry about second breakfast. You pat a pocket for loose change, find only the folded dream note from earlier, and decide intellectual nourishment will have to do. Reflections ripple under the arched Nideg Bridge up ahead. Buildings lean toward the water like curious scholars inspecting their own footnotes. You slow, transfixed by how each stone facade, each shutter, each lime-washed wall seems to glide backward the instant you move forward, a silent demonstration of reference frames more poetic than any chalkboard diagram. Historians still argue whether these dawn strolls by the river planted the seed for your later declaration that motion and rest are matters of perspective, not privilege. Some colleagues insist you carried the idea from childhood daydreams, while others point to this very commute as the moment velocity became intimate. Either way, the RA keeps its secrets beneath folds of liquid green. A sudden gust chills your knuckles and sets your violin case humming against its handle hardware. You tighten your grip, momentarily imagining the bow sliding free and sending chords ricocheting off the bridge's limestone vaults. The mental image of startled office clerks later gossiping about a rogue concerto almost persuades you, but duty nips your ear. You redirect the energy into a brisker pace, breath puffing in small clouds that drift backward like surrendered speech balloons. Did you know, long before fame, Einstein used this river path to rehearse entire lectures in his head, adjusting imaginary spectacles and clearing phantom throats at invisible audiences of willow trees. Onlookers assumed he was debating himself, which, in fairness, he often was. You continue the tradition now, mumbling a mock greeting to an assembly of ducks bobbing near the bank. Gentle fowl, consider two observers, one stationary, one quacking. The ducks regard you with an indifference, bordering on enlightenment. You approach a stone bench, etched with initials and lichen. Perching there for a moment, you pull out your pocket watch, the one that still runs at least, and compare its second hand to the tick-tocks of your pulse. They almost align. Almost. That almost flickers like static, and suddenly your vision floods with twin train engines again, each screaming past the other in opposite directions. If time were a string, you wonder, could it knot? Could it fray? Could it bend into a loop around this very bench, so that the second hand never truly leaves 12? A distant church bell tolls 7. The sound lags a fraction behind its echo across the river wall, creating an odd doubleness that prickles your neck. You rise, tuck the watch away, and resume walking, but not before pressing your fingertips to the bench's damp stone, a small vow to return later and finalize this puzzle in chalk, if the night fog allows. Trudging onward, you spot the patent office in miniature across the river, the building's stern facade peering through sycamores like a proctor waiting with stopwatch in hand. You could cross the nearest bridge now and arrive on time, but habit drags you farther along the water's edge, prolonging the luxury of motion unpoliced by whistles. Your shoes leave curving tracks in frost-flecked sand, ephemeral graphs of acceleration and slippage, soon to be erased by lapping waves. That swallow from earlier doubles back, darts beneath the bridge, and emerges on the far side of your peripheral vision. You pivot instinctively, tracking its flight path, mentally marking speed against backdrop. You calculate nothing, yet everything computes. Light still outruns the swallow, outruns you, outruns the patisserie fragrances, but only because you haven't drafted the paperwork to challenge it. Yet, you chuckle at the absurdity, a civil servant filing cosmic grievances. Up ahead, tram rails glitter. You sigh, already sensing the day's bureaucracy demanding its tribute. But even as your steps angle toward that inevitable crossing, your thoughts lag behind, floating over the river like a misplaced reflection. The Aare, indifferent to commutes and deadlines, keeps sliding eastward, ferrying melted mountain snow toward the Rhine, toward the sea, toward distant horological mysteries you will never fully chart. You give the river a respectful nod, as one scientist to another. It burbles a reply you choose to interpret as encouragement. Crossing the bridge, you resist a final urge to fling your hat into the wind just to watch the spinning frame of reference. Instead, you jam the hat tighter, tug your collar high, and can you pace toward the path off his copper that it's punctuality. Your socks, navy and mustard, flash alternately like semaphore flags signalling to whoever cares. Curiosity ahead, proceed with caution. The foyer of the Swiss Patent Office exhales a distinctly bureaucratic draft each time the heavy oak door swings shut behind you. It smells faintly of ink, coal dust, and the collective sighs of would-be inventors. You tip your hat to Frau Keller at the reception desk, who guards her inkwell like a dragon relishing hoarded treasure. She returns a curt nod, eyes flicking to the clock on the wall. Yes, you're 3 minutes late, but hardly enough to set the earth off its axis. Your mismatched socks flash beneath your trousers as you stride toward the stairwell, a jaunty rebellion against the marble sobriety. Up 2 flights, the corridor funnels you toward a glass-panel door, stenciled, Eidgenössisches Amt für Geistiges Eigentum, ABT 3. Inside, the clatter of typewriters and the squeak of inky rubber stamps form a perpetual percussion line. The desks stand in regimented rows like soldiers drilled in square formation. Each piled with paper drifts high enough to justify a warning to alpine hikers. You weave through the snowy paperwork peaks until you reach your own well-worn summit, Desk 27. The surface holds yesterday's untouched stack of submissions, a chipped mug that once believed it would ferry coffee before being conscripted into pen storage, and a sheet of scrap paper bearing the hasty dawn equation you pocketed earlier. You smooth that scrap flat beside the first dossier, which announces itself in spidery handwriting as Method and Apparatus for the Hygienic Milking of Goats. You arch an eyebrow. The goats of Switzerland will soon be the cleanest in Europe. Sliding into the creaky wooden chair, you remove your coat but keep the violin case propped against your leg, as though the mere proximity of music might ward off administrative stupor. Breath steady, posture straight, you open the goat dossier. Diagrams of suction tubes and brass fittings sprawl across brittle pages, each component lovingly labelled. The inventor insists his device causes minimum goat indignation. You chuckle, imagining a filing category called ovine emotional distress mitigation. Ink pen in hand, you begin the ritual. Evaluate novelty, confirm utility, ensure diagrams match claims, and most crucial, verify no prior art lurks to sink an applicant's hopes. The routine should lull you into monotony, but today, as often happens, your mind takes the paperwork and spins it into a private laboratory. You picture goat udders as reference frames, milk as photons, and suddenly you're wondering, if a goat sprinted beside a beam of light while being milked, would the flow rate appear different to a stationary farmer? The absurdity delights you. Ridiculous metaphors often cloak profound truths. Page after page flicks beneath your pen. The stamp thunks approval or rejection with rhythmic finality. Yet between each thunk, your gaze keeps drifting to that folded note about bicycling at light speed. You imagine pinning the goats to the handlebars as timepieces, or perhaps strapping pocket watches to their collars, anything to test simultaneity by barnyard standards. You stifle a laugh, aware that Herr Klammer, 2 desks over, already suspects your grip on reality is as loose as his dentures. Did you know Einstein's official title here was Technical Expert, 3rd class? A rank so modest that colleagues joked a well-trained post owl could replace him. Despite the humble designation, you process more patents per day than many in higher pay grades, partly because mental detours into physics seem to oil the gears of efficiency rather than stall them. Next dossier: electromechanical synchronization device for railway clocks. Irony pours off the page. Every train station in Europe wants its clocks to agree down to the second, while you're quietly convinced absolute simultaneity is a mirage. Still, fair review requires setting personal heresies aside. You study the schematic. A master pendulum transmits pulses along telegraph wires to secondary clocks. Clever, but you mark a note. Susceptible to line delays during thunderstorms. Your pen hesitates mid-sentence. Delays. Yes, but relative to whom? The thought sparks mini fireworks, and you pause to draw a waveform in the margin, imagining the signal's speed against the storm's electric fury. Across the aisle, Frau Bloomless slaps a stack of papers with enough force to wake sleeping theories. She glances up, notices your scribbled waveform, and rolls her eyes with practiced precision. You respond with a polite smile. Then tuck the railway clock dossier into the outbound tray. Lunch hour approaches, heralded by the distant clang of the canteen bell. Before you can rise, your supervisor, Herr Haller, materializes like an admonitory apparition. His moustache is waxed to needlepoints, his waistcoat buttoned to the last millimeter of tolerance. He surveys your desk, zeroing in on the scrap equation. "Personal work, Herr Einstein?" he inquires with all the warmth of a station master, announcing delays. "Merely verifying dimensional consistency for an applicant's diagram," you answer, meeting his gaze through round spectacles that inconveniently have slipped to the tip of your nose. He grunts, appropriates the goat-milking dossier, and scans your approval note. "Minimum goat indignation," he mutters, face unreadable. After an interminable pause, he signs off with a brusque nod and retreats, dossier tucked under arm. Only when his footsteps fade do you exhale fully. With the overseer gone, you flick open the next file. Portable, vacuum-powered hair-curling apparatus. You skim the claims, then drift again into analogy. If hair strands approached light speed, would their apparent length contract, making curls tighter? The mental image of fashionable ladies achieving relativistic ringlets nearly sends ink dribbling onto the form. You steady your hand and remind yourself that the lunch bell has rung. Even patent clerks require sustenance. Stacking dossiers with deliberate care, you lock them in your desk drawer, the one that squeaks like a violin E-string stuck between notes. The office empties in waves, chairs scraping floors, chatter rising in multilingual eddies. You slip the folded dream note back into your pocket, the promise of future equations thrumming through its fibers. Coat on, violin reclaimed, you join the exodus toward the canteen, mismatched socks flashing under fluorescent glare like covert confetti. As you reach the stairwell, a shaft of sunlight from a dusty window slices the landing, illuminating motes that swirl in unseen currents. You pause, watching the particles drift and dive while your colleagues hurry past. They see dust. You see inertial frames suspended in miniature, each particle tracing paths independent yet interlaced, performing ballet in slow motion. Somewhere deep inside, a hypothesis shifts one notch closer to articulation. The stairwell clock ticks, loud, authoritarian. You check your pocket watch again and notice the slightest discrepancy. The idea that two clocks mere meters apart can't agree tickles your ribs like an inside joke. You chuckle softly, earning another suspicious glance from her clamor, but you can't help it. These ticking rebellions make the day bearable. Downstairs, the aroma of lentil soup wafts from the canteen, mingling with the metallic tang of serving spoons. You inhale, letting hunger anchor you to the present. Papers, clocks, goat indignation, all can wait another hour. Your brain, meanwhile, files every sensory detail for later, and perhaps, when the cafe reopens at dusk and Mozart returns to your fingertips, you'll translate those details into equations no bureaucrat could rubber stamp. You slip out of the patent office canteen after a perfunctory bowl of lentil soup, letting the herd migrate back to their desks, while you angle toward the alley that leads to Café Bolwerk, unofficial headquarters of the so-called Olympia Academy. The afternoon sun tosses cheerful shards of light between tall facades, and your mismatched socks gleam like two small banners proclaiming intellectual amnesty. Lena, your violin, rests at home for now. This next symphony will be played with teacups, notebooks, and the occasional breadcrumb projectile. You push open the cafe's fogged glass door, and the din inside wraps around you like a heated blanket stitched from laughter and espresso steam. At a back table under a crooked gas sconce sit your co-conspirators, Maurice Solovine, lanky as a metronome, and Conrad Habicht, whose grin could power a small turbine. They've already converted 2 chairs into coat racks and littered the tabletop with dog-eared pamphlets, a half-devoured croissant, and 3 pocket-sized notebooks that bristle with penciled equations. "Gentlemen," you greet, sliding onto the remaining chair. Solovine raises his cup in salute. Habicht offers a crust of bread like a ceremonial dagger. You accept, dunking it into thick chocolate that clings to the spoon with admirable viscosity, perfect fuel for philosophical mischief. Conversation fires up instantly, no preamble required. Solovine has been rereading Ernst Mach's Musings on Inertia and claims kinetic energy is nothing more than bookkeeping for motion. Habicht counters that energy must have substance, otherwise how could it smack you in the face when a wagon hits your shin? You grin, licking chocolate from your knuckle. Fieldwork via shin injuries has its merits. Did you know, despite the Academy's lofty name, its only membership requirement is the ability to endure endless tangents while surviving on café pastries? Minutes are never taken, dues are never paid, and yet these meetings will eventually birth ideas cited in physics textbooks for a century. Today's central riddle involves a sealed box sliding across ice. If you hop inside mid-slide, does the kinetic energy vanish because your frame changes, or linger like a stubborn echo? Habicht sketches a rectangle and a wobbly stick figure you suspect is meant to be you. Hair wild, socks proudly asymmetric. Solovine plots arrows for velocity vectors, annotating them with Greek letters that would make a mathematician wince. Steam rises off their cups, each swirl briefly illuminating the drawing like spectral chalk on dark water. You prod the diagram with a fingertip, smearing ink. Imagine, you say. Instead of a box we use a goat, they groan in chorus, memories of your morning patent dossier already circulating. Harnessed to a sled. Habicht taps the table in mock outrage. Must everything come back to ruminants? You shrug. A mind chooses its mascots. Besides, goats possess excellent traction testing capabilities. Between jibes, you tear a page from your notebook and jot. E3 Bry's half night lead squared. Relative to which V, the simplicity masks dynamite. Change the reference frame, and energy shuffles itself like a deck of cards. An accounting trick of the cosmos. Solovine notes that Mach tried to eject absolute motion from physics altogether, tethering everything to the distance between bodies. You sip tepid chocolate, tasting a slow thunder of possibility. Perhaps time, like kinetic energy, is also a bookkeeping sleight of hand, its ledger balanced differently depending on who's writing. Nearby, a waiter refills glasses with mint-speckled water, eavesdropping like a spy for the Society of Reasonable Employment. He lingers when Habicht slaps the table too hard, rattling teaspoons. Historians still argue whether these rowdy lunch sessions were adult education or elaborate procrastination. Either way, the cafe has learned to bill you up front. You lean back, chair tipping onto two legs, eyes drifting to a wall clock whose minute hand jerks in uneven spurts. The lag reminds you of the railway synchronization patent from earlier, and you recount its telegraph pulse design, Solovine snorts. So they whip the clocks until they behave? Barbaric. He proposes a gentler scheme. Let every station master whistle at precisely noon. Habicht calculates expected errors given wind speeds and forgets to multiply by pi, prompting a friendly paperball barrage. Soon diagrams proliferate, a train car with mirrored ceilings, a beam of light ping-ponging between, passengers measuring transit time with pocket watches. You feel that familiar skin tingle when the universe edges closer, as if breathless to divulge a secret. The watches tick, the train accelerates. From the platform's perspective, light's zigzag path stretches into a sawtooth, longer than what the passenger sees. If distance elongates while speed remains obstinately unvarying, then your heart drums. Time itself must dilate to keep the arithmetic honest. Habicht notices your sudden hush. Albert? He prods. Are you composing again? You nod slowly and fold the scrap into your breast pocket beside its dawn sibling. Two puzzle pieces now nestle like mismatched socks waiting to pair up, both pointing to a universe less concrete than cafe tables and goat diagrams suggest. A tray clatters as the waiter returns with syrupy blonde Apfelschorle. He eyes the scribbles and whispers, "Professors?" You laugh. "Clerks, very unimportant clerks." He departs bemused, leaving condensation rings to decorate your notes. Time stumbles forward in caffeine-lubricated bursts. At one point, Solovine fetches a chessboard, but the match devolves into physics charades. You mime inertia by refusing to budge when Habicht nudges your shoulder. He retaliates by spinning the board, declaring the pieces now experience fictitious forces. Solovine awards imaginary medals for theatrical merit. Through the window, thin clouds herd across the sky like paper boats. Sunbeams skim tabletops, highlighting sugar crystals, casting tiny rainbow arcs in spilled water. You track each arc's angle, half aware you're measuring wavelengths by eye. Habit. Finally, you check your watch. Its minute hand slides past 3. Afternoon duties loom like unpaid bar tabs. You gather notebooks, flick crumbs from coat lapels, and stand. Solovine sketches one last equation, cups it in both palms, and offers it like a departing blessing. Delta T quaescotters, the square root of rebellion. Habicht whistles low, sensing magnitude without numbers. You tuck the formula away. Bedtime tonight may arrive with fireworks. Settling the bill requires pooled coins and a rogue stamp from your pocket. The waiter accepts, accustomed to your odd currency. Outside, the street has shifted hue, late-day gold seeping into corners. Your trio drifts apart with casual murmurs, Solovine toward the university, Habicht to his teaching post, and you toward the patent office, brain fizzing like carbonated ink. On the return walk, you rehearse the light beam train in your head, syncing footsteps to imagined ticks. When a carriage rattles by, its wheels blur. You wonder how its passengers interpret your mismatched socks as they glide past. A two-frame experiment nobody notices. The notion sparks a grin so wide a passerby mistakes you for tipsy. Perhaps you are. Intoxicated by velocity, staggered by the elasticity of time. Back at the office door, you pause, palm on cold brass, and inhale the sober scent of ink destined to drown lunchtime revelations. Not today. You pocket the goat inductions, raise your chin, and step inside, determined to stamp bureaucracy with secret stardust. The patent office door snicks shut behind you, muffling lunch chatter while amplifying the tick-tock duet between pocket watch and pulse. You drop hat and coat at desk 27, pivot and stride back out, ignoring Herr Haller's raised eyebrow. A single idea pulls you skyward like a kite. The clock tower is about to sing. Up Kramgasse, the Zitglog rules burns hours with bronze authority. Its copper roof glows green gold against blue sky, the astronomical dial already courting tourists. You slip through them until you find a niche beneath an arcade archway, prime listening post. It's 4:56 p.m. You flip open your watch. The metallic heartbeat suddenly nervous. Ambient noises fade. Only tower and ticker remain. At 4:58, you study Kronos above the dial. Legend says he devours a child each hour. Today he only flashes light off his scythe. You picture two observers, you on the street, another riding the tram now rattling into view. Both brace for the chime, but will they agree on when? Exactly at 5, the automaton rooster flaps. Bears march, Kronos raises his scepter, and the first bell note blooms. Sound socks your chest before your ears register pitch. A split-second echo bounces off opposite facades. Your watch hand twitches, yet light beats sound. And light reached the tram passenger sooner still. Your lips count micro-intervals you can't measure. Yet the exercise carves grooves in thought. Did you know? Einstein later said, these very chimes seeded his doubts about absolute simultaneity. Standing here, you feel time peel into thin layers, each buttery with possibility. The tourists drift away. Eyes half closed, you replay the sequence. For a watcher atop the tower, light and sound depart together. Delay evaporates. For the tram rider, light wins while sound lags, stretched by velocity. Perspectives hang like lanterns along the street, none privileged, all true. Albert! Herr Klammer jogs over, gasping. Haller wants the Dutch phonograph filed. You nod, still hearing bells. Before sundown, you promise. He mutters that one day you'll wind yourself too tight, then hurries off. You pocket the watch and stroll. Historians still argue whether this very walk planted special relativity's seed, or whether the idea grew from countless smaller irritations with Newtonian neatness. Either way, roots now crack old certainties, like spring frost. At a bakery, you buy a butter biscuit, trading coins with a flour-dusted girl who stares at your socks. Suppose lightning strikes the east gate and another bolt of the west wall. Simultaneous for a street observer, skewed for the speeding tram. The scenario slots beside morning light beam sketches and Hebigt's square root formula. Back at the office, return number 2, you slip to desk 27. Hala glowers but stays silent. You pull the phonograph dossier under your lamp, yet margins soon fill with arrows, clocks, tiny tramcars. Equations sprout, erase, sprout again while shadows slide across the blotter. Closing time. You stack completed papers and hand them to Frau Keller. She stamps them, then asks why a hair-curling patent shows lightning bolts. You mutter about static, escaping before inquiry multiplies. Lamp posts flicker awake one by one, their gas flames budding like cautious stars. You drift toward the tram rails, mind rehearsing bell echoes in mathematical cadence. Each step becomes a denominator, each exhale a numerator. Overhead a swallow darts through lamplight cones, a living diagram of inertial frames. You imagine freezing the whole city in a photograph taken at the instant of the bell. Except, instant has fractured. In the snapshot, some shutters are still rising while others are already mid-clatter. A dog lifts its head before the policeman beside it flinches. To stitch these slivers into one story, you'd need scissors made of equations. Yet the more you trim, the more edges refuse to meet. The universe, apparently, dislikes tidy scrapbooks. A street musician squeezes an accordion. The first chord drifts ahead of its breath, lagging like sound after the bell. Timing taunts you at every corner. Fatigue pinches your shoulders, but exhilaration buoys your stride. Violin practice can wait. Tonight's sonata will be algebraic. You picture the apartment table strewn with wrinkled patent abstracts pressed into service as scratch paper. Mileva may roll her eyes, yet she'll fetch tea while you mutter variables to the wallpaper, and the baby splutters counterpoint from the cradle. The tower's hands inch towards 6. Bears reset behind shuttered doors, gears braced for another performance. You tip an imaginary hat to Kronos, thanking him for the lesson. He offers no reply, but a breeze rattles the flags and seems to whisper, "Keep asking." You nod, pocket biscuit crumbs, and step into the violet evening. Footprints and questions overlapping like twin oscillations fading in opposite phase. By the time you reach the apartment stairwell, the dawn scrap, the cafe equation, and a fresh lightning bolt sketch rustle together in your coat like conspirators rehearsing testimony. You pat the pocket reassuringly. They're safe. Cross-examination begins after supper. At a bakery, you buy a butter biscuit, trading coins with a flour-dusted girl who... Back at desk 27, the afternoon light slants through grimy panes, carving luminous bars across regiments of dossiers like prison stripes for ideas. You hang your hat on the swivel chair's corner and breathe deep. The room smells of drying ink, floor polish, and a subtle undercurrent of unspoken dreams. Herr Haler prowls near the supply cabinet, waistcoat stretched to the limits of propriety. But you pretend not to notice. After all, someone must gently smuggle a revolution past his epauletted vigilance. You shuffle the topmost stack, goat-milking addenda, hair-curling schematics, a pocketable lightning rod that looks worryingly like a kebab skewer. Then slip a blank sheet between them, a trench dug for clandestine calculations. One eye stays on Haler, the other dives into algebra. This dual vision routine has become your circus act. Tame the dossiers with one hand, while the other coaxes the universe to confess. Pen scritches softly. E equals Michael recalentration. Somewhere a typewriter carriage dings, masking your scratch-outs. You recall Habicht's square root formula from lunch, still warm in your pocket. Light's constancy refuses to budge. Fine, let velocity fight mass instead. Graphite loops, erases, redraws. The paper begins to look like an archaeological dig site, layered with failed kingdoms of thought. A courier thumps a fresh bundle on your blotter. You thank him with a lopsided grin and immediately hollow out the middle documents, forming a paper cave for your private notebook. It feels ridiculous, yet delicious. Rebellion by origami. You glance up. Herr Klammer, 2 desks over, snores, chin to chest. Denture rattle providing metronome. Safe enough. You sketch 2 identical coins, one at rest, the other hurtling across the page. If both strike a brass plate, and the plate warms more under the speeding coin, then motion must carry energy in its pockets. But what if you fall asleep atop the moving coin? Bam! Reference frame shift. And now the plate races toward you. The warmth should be the same. That symmetry whispers scandal. Maybe mass itself is energy in a patient's suit. Your pen stalls mid-ink blot. A memory surfaces of morning fog curling around the era. How simple the river's flow felt compared to this conceptual torrent. You steady breath, listening to pencils tapping, chairs creaking, distant tram bells echoing. Each sound arrives freighted with silent equations, time delays, pressure waves, decaying amplitudes. It's like hearing the city hum in Morse code. Did you know? During his patent office years, Einstein judged more than 700 applications. Yet colleagues later joked they remembered him only for the spectacular quantity of blotting paper squares he requisitioned. Mysterious scraps found stuffed in pockets, hatbands, and once, incredibly, a violin scroll. You blot the latest ink splash with such a square, folding it deliberately as though tucking away a classified telegram. On the blot's ghosted mirror image, the symbols almost assemble themselves. E equals MC. You stare. Could it be this tidy? Energy equals mass multiplied by the speed of light squared. The most extravagant exchange rate imaginable. Before you can celebrate, footsteps thunder in the corridor. Herr Haller's silhouette looms across frosted glass, moustache dagger sharp. Instinct flicks you into action. Blotter flipped, formula buried, goat indignation sheets fanned outward like a bureaucratic peacock. Haller enters, eyes narrowed. Progress, Herr Einstein. You hold up the pocket lightning rod dossier. Considering field strength tolerances, sir. He nods, obviously pleased you're mired in practicalities. Then his gaze drops to your socks, navy and mustard still at large. One brow lifts. You distract him with a question about goat suction pressures. It works. He grimaces, mutters biohazard, and vanishes toward the typewriter pool. Exhale. Heart sprints faster than any tram. You reclaim the folded blot and slide it into your cigarette case. Nobody searches there. It reeks of philosophical heresy rather than tobacco. Pen poised again, you test the equation on a familiar thought experiment. A box emits twin photons in opposite directions, itself recoiling not at all. If light carries momentum, then mass must slip away with the photons. Rearranged algebra unveils the same regal expression. Royalty confirmed. The wall clock ticks 5:17. Outside, sunset begins laundering rooftops in peach and copper. You finish rubber stamping 3 mundane patents, supervisor bait, then let your mind prowl mass energy territory. Suppose every crumb of strudel contains solar-sized power, hidden until conditions unlock it. You picture your morning bakery scent wielding star-like potency, and grin so broadly, Frau Blumler demands to know the joke. You mutter about exceptionally combustible pastries. She edges away. Pages turn, pen dances, but pages also vanish. Clamour woke and adopted a policy of tidy by redistribution, meaning your slate clears itself just as your mind overloads. Perfect timing. You tuck notebook into inner jacket pocket, where dream note and tram formula now rub shoulders like conspirators plotting escape. Suddenly, the electric ceiling bulbs flicker. Burns grid hiccups. For half a breath, everything slows, and you feel the office tilt into twilight unreality. In that pause, you sense mass, energy, time, and light weighting the air like 4 cardinals at a consecration. Bulbs stutter back on. The moment snaps, yet resonance lingers like rosin after a violin chord. Administrators begin packing satchels. Typewriters fall silent save one overworked carriage return. You add finishing flourishes to the hair curler verdict. Approved, but warn about heat hazards near kerosene lamps. Slip it atop the outgoing pile and rise. Coat on, hat cocked, you step into the corridor. Herr Haller materializes once more, brandishing the goat dossier. What genius approved suction levels that risk utter collapse, he barks. You feign astonishment, promise revisions at dawn, then assure him your evening is entirely free for corrective study. Technically true, study of a cosmic bent. You descend the stairwell 2 steps at a time, each footfall an exclamation point. Outside, lamps sputter to full brightness. They remind you the tower's gas flames took seconds to propagate earlier. Another breadcrumb. You pocket that too. The city seems suddenly fragile, a watchworks of energy disguised as architecture. Every brick thrums with mass that could blossom into light should some cosmic locksmith turn the key. As you head for the tram stop, the wind plucks at your coattails, flipping them like pages yet unread. Night carries bakery warmth, horse sweat, and a promise of calculations to come. You tighten your grip on the cigarette case, the crown jewels of your afternoon anarchy, while the tram clangs into view. Sparks skate along its power line, blue-white bursts that hint at the secrets now beating under your ribs. Polite commuters board first. You follow, mismatched socks stepping onto the varnished floorboards as though christening a new domain of physics. You settle by a window streaked with condensation and watch the city glide backwards. Street lamps elongate into golden spears, reflections smear. Motion sketches a living graph on your retina. Somewhere in those smears, E=mc² pulses like a lighthouse guiding this modest tram towards a revolution no passenger yet imagines. The tram lurches forward, wooden floorboards trembling beneath your shoes as the conductor's bell clangs in crisp evening air. You settle against the polished seatback, coat still warm from office lamplight, and watch burn roll past in dusky ribbons. Street lamps bloom one by one, each incandescent globe a miniature sunrise doing its best impression of a photon factory. Their glow blurs into golden comets across the window pane the instant the tram gathers pace, smearing reality into an impressionist canvas. You blink, and for a heartbeat you swear you can hear Quanta whispering jokes about how slow humans are. Steel wheels grind sparks from the rails, spitting orange fireflies that flit alongside for a single breath before fizzling out. You tap the cigarette case in your pocket, its hidden blot holding that outrageous equation, and imagine those sparks as runaway bits of E impatiently shedding their M. If only Herr Haller could see what just rode his tram lines. The cabin rattles through an intersection where shop fronts reflect twin images of you, one mustard-socked, one navy-socked, out of phase by a fraction of a second, thanks to angled glass. You lean in, fascinated by the time ghost your reflection produces. Is the mustard you already ahead of the navy you, or vice versa? Perception staggers across panes like a drunk tightrope walker, daring you to call any single instant the present. A young woman opposite knits a striped scarf, needles flashing silver flashes as street lamp comets streak behind her. She's counting stitches under her breath. You're counting photon impacts per square second. Neither of you notices the difference. Both are tallying order against chaos. A curve in the track tilts the cabin, and the scarf's stripes warp just enough to trigger another thought experiment. If her wool were made from beams of light, how would the pattern look to someone boarding at half the speed of light? You grin at the absurdity, and at the realization that absurdity, not propriety, fuels discovery. Did you know? Years later, Einstein confessed that many of his deepest intuitions arrived while riding trams, insisting that public transport is the cheapest laboratory a physicist could wish for. Ticket price, a single Swiss franc. Payoff, new universes. Outside, the air reappears briefly, a dark mirror stitched with flickering lamp reflections that elongate into molten gold threads. You feel the tram slice through the city's magnetic field, tiny vibrations humming up the metal frame. Someone pulls the bell cord, the clang reverberates, its pitch sagging as the tram decelerates. You catch yourself noting how frequency drops with speed. Doppler's lullaby. Historians still argue whether this exact acoustic stumble nudged you toward exploring gravitational redshift in later years. But tonight, it's simply another data point singing under your breath. The tram lurches forward, wooden floorboards trembling beneath your shoes as the conductor's bell clangs in crisp evening air. You settle against the Brox line. You will Vollens when you're brawn in. The doors jerk open. Chilled air gusts through, smelling of chimney smoke and river damp. You exhale fog, then inhale potential. Two students hop aboard, debating whether Kant ever understood time or merely named it. You resist the urge to interject with goat metaphors. Instead, you fish a stub of pencil from your pocket and scribble on the ticket's blank margin. Delta T equals gamma delta T0. Pencil snaps, idea intact. The tram rattles through a tighter curve, and lamps beyond the windows execute dizzy arcs. You picture tiny packets of light, photons, launching from each filament, all at the same stubborn speed, obeying nobody's timetable but their own. The city appears almost liquid now, a smear of ochres and blues bending around the tram's momentum. You realize you're effectively inside a vast camera obscura, shutter slamming cosmic truths onto your retina's 24 frames a second. An elderly man across the aisle catches you muttering variables and offers a peppermint. You accept with thanks, unwrap it slowly, and watch its glossy surface catch lamp glow. In another frame of reference, you muse. That simple spiral of sugar is compressed, its stripes tighter, colours deeper. Reality depends on perspective. Confectionery proves it. 3 stops later, the conductor calls Kramgasse. Your stop. You rise, cane back seat creaking a farewell, and step onto the cobblestones. The tram clangs away, sparks retreating into distance like fleeing ideas. You pause beneath a wrought-iron street lamp, letting its halo pool around your hat brim, the peppermint's cool sweetness lingering on your tongue. Home is a short climb, but tonight you linger. Shop shutters rattle closed, wooden latches clicking like typewriter keys finishing a sentence. You gaze uphill toward the Djit Glogger Tower, faintly silhouetted now, bears behind its shutters, ready for another hourly march. You imagine their gears ticking in silent sympathy with the pocket watch near your heart. But sympathy is not equivalence. Every apparatus keeps its own counsel on now. A baker's last tray of pretzels steams by an open window. The smell loops back to morning, to goat dossiers and mismatched socks. You laugh softly at the symmetry. Dough rising and paperwork piling both obey invisible laws. Only yeast receives more applause. The tram lurches forward, wooden floorboards trembling beneath your shoes as the conductor's bell clangs in crisp evening air. You settle against the doors jerk open, chilled air gusts through, smelling of chimney smoke and river damp. You exhale fog, then inhale potential. 2 students hop aboard, debating whether Kant ever understood time, or merely named it. You resist the urge to interject with goat metaphors. Instead, you fish a stub of pencil from your pocket and scribble on the ticket's blank margin. Delta T equals gamma delta T. Pencil snaps. Idea intact. You climb stone steps past Frau Baumgartner's hat shop. Her cat surveys you from the sill, pupils dilating in lamplight like expanding universes. Evening, you whisper. It blinks once, regal, then resumes calculating the most efficient path to the next nap, clearly a practitioner of least action principles. Your door opens with its familiar wooden groan. Inside, the apartment is dim, save for a single oil lamp that Mileva must have left burning. Shadows waltz across violin varnish resting on the side table. You slip out of shoes, mismatched socks padding softly toward the kitchen, where teacups wait inverted on a rag. A kettle sits half-filled on the stove. You set it over a low flame. While water warms, you unfurl the day's relics on the table. Tram ticket scribble, blot with E equals MC squared, the dawn scrap about bicycling at light speed, and a breadcrumb smudged margin from lunch. 4 fragments of a cosmic jigsaw. You slide them until edges nearly kiss, then step back as though expecting them to self-assemble. Perhaps later they will. After the violin hums, after the baby settles, after the city exhales its final bell and drifts into midnight quiet. Steam whistles. You pour tea, listening to bubbles crackle like distant static. Behind you, the violin glints. Lena is jealous. You promise her a lullaby soon, one measured not in bars but in space-time intervals. Outside, the last tram clang fades down the hill, its bell an echo of curious passengers and silent equations. You sip, letting the warmth seep through ribs, and watch the lamp's flame sway in a draught. Each flicker red shifts, blue shifts, red shifts again as the wick bends. Light, motion, energy, 3 partners in an endless dance whose steps you finally glimpsed from a rattling wooden bench. You extinguish the lamp, leaving only moonshine through crooked panes. Papers rustle under the faint breeze, aligning themselves into a new constellation on the table. You smile, slip the cigarette case atop the pile, and head toward the violin, preparing to draw a single note long enough to measure a lifetime. Back in the cramped apartment, the door clicks behind you like a laboratory seal. The moon spills cold silver across warped floorboards, but the kitchen lamp throws a warmer glow, revealing Mileva in her robe, hair unpinned, coaxing the infant to drowse with a rhythmical sway. She greets you with a raised eyebrow, equal parts affection and exasperation, and points her chin toward the stove where a plate of strudel cools beneath a tea towel. You shed your coat, violin, and the day's public mask, piling them on the single chair that serves as wardrobe by night. You join her at the hearth, relieving her arms so she can fetch 2 chipped mugs. The baby's eyelids flutter, then surrender. You breathe in the breadcrumb sweet scent of Mileva's hair and feel the apartment shrink to the size of a snow globe. She retreats to the table, placing mugs beside the waiting pastry. The kettle whistles. You both watch its steam pirouette up into lamplight, each coil a miniature reminder of turbulent equations yet to be tamed. The table is an archaeological dig of your day. Tram ticket scrawls, blotting paper hieroglyphs, goat indignation cartoons, and a fresh constellation of pencil shavings. You clear a saucer-sized space, brush back crumbs, and spread out the 4 key fragments. Mileva lowers herself opposite, chin resting on fingers, eyes reflecting the lamp's amber halo. "So," she murmurs, "did the universe behave at the patent office?" You tear the strudel, butter crackling through flaky layers, and answer through a mouthful of cinnamon. "Well, it almost let me approve a hair curler that doubles as a lightning rod." She snorts, then tips her head toward your pocket. "And the other thing?" You slide the cigarette case across. She opens it, unfolds the ink-blotted square, eyebrows lifting as the symbols emerge like a conjurer's trick. Tea splashes into mugs, and you cradle yours, letting ceramic warmth seep into your knuckles. The baby gives one sleepy chirp from the cradle in the corner. You both pause, listen, then return to whispered math. You roll open a blank sheet and redraw the light beam train, this time adding tiny bears parading around the carriage, a nod to the Zeitglogger's toy soldiers. Mileva adds a margin note. "Clock rates?" You tap the blot. Mass energy equivalents, maybe the missing key. She traces the C in the equation's superscript, murmuring, "Light makes everything extravagant, doesn't it?" Did you know? Mileva Maric was among the first women admitted to Zurich's Polytechnic's physics program. She once outscored every male peer, yourself included, on a mechanics exam. You never forget this. It's why you slide the pencil her way whenever numbers dig in their heels. The kettle rattles again. You top up mugs, then slice fresh lines through algebra, letting the graphite race the cooling tea. The strudel dwindles. First bites devoured analytically, later ones absent-mindedly, while your minds range far beyond pastry territory. Crumbs tumble across integrals. You laugh when a raisin lands on a superscript. "Gravity," you declare. She flicks it off. Or poor handwriting. Outside, a cart clops past, iron rims striking cobble in perfect quarter-note meter. You sink your tapping foot to the clop, letting rhythm steady thought. Equation cascades into conditionals. If energy equals mass times light speed squared, then even a stale raisin is a powder keg, merely locked by circumstance. Strudel suddenly feels weightier in your stomach. You pat it apologetically and keep writing. Mileva challenges the dimensional analysis. Units must balance, otherwise it's romance, not physics. You grin at her precision, scribble checks beside each term, and nod. Satisfied, she refocuses on simultaneity. If velocity bends time, then for 2 clocks in relative motion, which one gets the last crumb? She steals the actual last crumb before you answer. A practical demonstration of reference frames favoring nearby observers. The lamp's flame gutters, dimming. You adjust the wick, watching shadows elongate like rubber bands across plaster walls. The violin on its side table gleams, yearning. You promise it a lullaby soon. First, another page. You draw 2 bolts, striking a railroad embankment. The lightning thought experiment. Mark distances, then let Mileva rotate the paper. Upside down, she spots a symmetry you missed. The midpoint observer's agreement depends on signal speed, nothing else. She sketches bells, echo delays, redoubles your earlier tower insights. The argument locks into place like gears meshing. Somewhere in the stairwell, a neighbor curses a stubborn lamp. Glass shatters, footsteps retreat. You both fall silent, ears tuned, but the baby snoozes on. Relieved, you lean closer. voices hushed as conspirators. If it holds, you whisper, then the speed of light is the universe's bribe to keep equations honest. Mileva smirks. Then honesty costs exactly 300 million meters per second. You sit back, scrub temples, and feel the day's momentum catch up. Ink stains thumb pads black. Cinnamon dust clings to cuffs. Papers sprawl like territorial maps, each arrow a frontier. Candle wax scent mingles with tea. The whole room seems to inhale with you, preparing for some irreversible step. Yet progress tonight is less thunderclap than slow tectonic nudge, plates sliding quietly beneath the kitchen table. Mileva begins stacking sheets in chronological order, a gentle archivist nudging revolution toward coherence. You slide the cigarette case back into your pocket, payload secured. A yawn ambushes you. She echoes it. Enough, she whispers. Tomorrow you'll make the world detonate its coffee with that equation. Tonight, sleep. You sweep stray crumbs into your palm, drop them on a saucer for morning sparrows that visit the sill. Papers are squared, pencils nested, lamp wick lowered to an ember. Together you lift the cradle, very carefully, into the bedroom nook, then return to extinguish the kitchen's faint light. Before leaving, you rest fingertips on the folded blot once more, feeling the ink's raised ridges. E-M-C. 3 letters, 1 superscript. A secret bigger than goat suction or lightning rods. In the hallway lamp glow, you exchange a final glance, both seeing the equations glow behind each other's eyes. Perhaps the city slumbers unaware, but the universe tips its hat, one relativity novice to another. You reach for Mileva's hand. Her fingers squeeze back in silent agreement. The real work begins at dawn. You sit back, scrub temples, and feel the day's momentum catch up. Ink stains thumb pads black. Cinnamon dust clings to cuffs. Papers sprawl like territorial maps, each arrow a frontier. Candle wax scent mingles with tea. The whole room seems to inhale with you, preparing for some irreversible step. Yet progress tonight is less thunderclap than slow tectonic nudge, plates sliding quietly beneath the kitchen table. Mileva begins stacking sheets in chronological order, a gentle archivist nudging revolution toward coherence. You slide the cigarette case back into your pocket, payload secured. A yawn ambushes you. She echoes it. Enough, she whispers. Tomorrow you'll make the world detonate its coffee with that equation. Tonight, sleep. Midnight presses its cool thumb against the attic window panes while you nibble the stub of your pencil, deciding how to begin a letter that must travel no farther than the bedroom across the hall. The baby has finally surrendered to sleep. Mileva's breathing drifts steady behind the cracked door, and the apartment lies hushed, except for the slow tick of the dismantled pocket watch on the sill, hands still loose, but determined. You spread a fresh sheet, smooth its corners, and let the ink bloom. My dearest Mileva, you write, if neurons could whistle, mine would surely wake the neighbours. You grin at the indulgence, then catalogue the day. Mismatched socks, causing diplomatic incidents. Goats rescued from indignation, and that afternoon's thunderbolt of an equation. You sketch it in the margin, E equals mc squared, circling the squared c twice for emphasis. Beneath, a doodle of the Zeitglogger bears prancing around a glowing raisin demonstrates how even pastry hides stellar power. A chill draft sneaks under the door. You pause to pour the last of the lukewarm tea, its surface quivering like a liquid mirror. In that reflection you glimpse yourself, hair in anarchic tufts, ink stains orbiting each knuckle, and cannot help chuckling. The universe chose an odd courier for its secrets. The laugh is soft, mindful of the sleeping housewood, but it steadies your hand. Did you know? Years later, historians uncovered 80+ Einstein letters from this period, many sealed with wax from the same stubby candle now guttering beside you. Most contained equal parts physics and playful reports about missing socks, as if balancing cosmic gravity with laundry levity. You described the tower bells, how sound dragged its heels while light sprinted ahead, and confessed that clocks around the world likely conspire against absolute time. Historians still argue whether tomorrow's physicists will call you mad or modestly prophetic, but tonight the ink makes no judgment. It merely flows, eager as photons escaping filament glass. The tip scratches on, thoughts of mass masquerading as stored energy, of railway clocks doomed to squabble, of a tram cab. You sit back, scrub temples, and feel the day's momentum catch up. Ink stains thumb pads black. Cinnamon dust clings to cuffs. Papers sprawl like territorial maps, each arrow a frontier. Candle wax scent mingles with tea. The whole room seems to inhale with you, preparing for some irreversible step. Yet, progress tonight is less thunderclap than slow tectonic nudge, plates sliding quietly beneath the kitchen table. Mileva begins stacking sheets in chronological order, a gentle archivist nudging revolution toward coherence. You slide the cigarette case back into your pocket, payload secured. A yawn ambushes you. She echoes it. "Enough," she whispers. "Tomorrow you'll make the world detonate its coffee with that equation. Tonight, sleep." Midnight presses its cool thumb against the attic window panes while you nibble the stub of your pencil, deciding how to begin a letter that must travel Yixt for. You thank Mileva for catching dimensional lapses, promise fresh strudel crumbs as calculus bribes, and predict that one day, children might giggle at the idea that time was ever considered identical for all. You sign, yours in relativity and raisins, fold the sheet, and drip red wax onto the seam. The stamp's emblem, a tiny violin, presses in with a satisfying hiss. You lean back, fingers ink-black and trembling with pleasant exhaustion. The violin waits obligingly. You lift it, tighten one peg, and draw a single glassy harmonics note. It hangs in the room like frost on a window, then fades. Satisfied, you slide Lena into her case, whispering that tomorrow she'll get a full concerto, fueled by theoretical fireworks. The candle flickers a farewell. You dab wax from your thumb, slip the sealed note beneath Mileva's cup, so she'll find it at breakfast, and gather the equation fragments into the cigarette case, now a treasury of midnight treasure maps. As you extinguish the lamp, moonlight takes custody of the room, pooling over papers like liquid mercury, gently obscuring ink but sharpening purpose. You tiptoe to the bedroom, socks silent on creaking boards, and pause at the cradle. Baby cheeks glow in lunar silver. Tiny fists unclench, convinced for now that the universe is warm and orderly. You smile, tucking a scrap of blanket under a chin no bigger than your thumbprint. Someday this child may ask why trains change time, or why goat milk flows differently to distant farmers. You resolve to have answers, perhaps even diagrams with raisins. At last you slip between thin wool blankets beside Mileva. She stirs, murmurs something about lightning rods, and nestles closer. You exhale the day, patent dossiers, cafe debates, tram epiphanies, and feel muscles loosen one by one. Beyond the window, Burns lamps recede into gauzy halos, and the moon keeps silent vigil, like a chalk circle drawn round your wanderings. The apartment sinks into deeper stillness, and your breath joins the slow rhythm of night. Thoughts drift like autumn leaves across a calm lake, each settling gently on a mirrored surface that refuses ripples. The distant clock tower chimes once, soft, muted by thick air, and the sound glides past your window without hurry, a reassuring reminder that hours can travel quietly when allowed. Your limbs grow warm and pleasantly heavy, as though every restless particle inside them has found a quiet chair and sat down. In the kitchenette, the kettle cools with tiny pops, each one farther apart than the last. The violin rests in moonlit half-shadow, its strings relaxed, bow hair slack, both awaiting morning with patient grace. Outside, the air slides beneath bridges, water black yet luminous where starlight grazes it. Even the river slows its song at this hour, whispering only the softest syllables against its banks. Farther still, trams stand idle on their rails, wooden benches empty, gears ticking in faint residual clicks, echoes of the day's electric hustle dissolving into a hush. You sense Mileva's heartbeat through the blankets, steady as a metronome set to lullaby tempo. The baby sighs, a cloud-small exhale that disappears into the quiet. Roof beams creak as they cool, timbers easing into deeper rest, joining floorboards, walls, and every cup and spoon in a shared, lingering exhalation. Allow your eyelids to lower like velvet curtains, shutting out even the silver glow. Let each breath widen into an easy tide. Inhale gentle curiosity, exhale all unanswered puzzles. Questions will wait, papers will wait. Even light itself can pause for you now. Feel the weight of the day melt away, replaced by a buoyant calm, as if you're drifting on a slow river under star-painted skies, carried safely toward morning. Sleep approaches, soft-footed and unhurried. Welcome it, and let the universe keep watch until dawn.